Hello from Jihad and the World, a podcast that explores the connection between Western and Islamic cultures. This is Mark Silinsky of Kensington Security Consulting, where we bring education to national security. Today's podcast revisits topics discussed in Jihad and the West. Black Flag over Babylon, released 10 years ago. Here, we provide brief biographies of two men who were in the news several years ago. Both answered the call of jihad and traveled abroad to fight against the West. Anwar al Awlaki was born in New Mexico in 1971 to Yemeni parents and moved to Yemen when he was 7. He lived there until he enrolled at Colorado State University, where he earned a degree in civil engineering. His true calling was Islam, and he served as an imam at mosques in California and Virginia, though he was not formally trained in Islamic jurisprudence or qualified as a sheikh. In 1994, he married a cousin from Yemen and worked part-time as an imam at the Denver Islamic Society. He was charismatic and persuasive. He preached on college campuses and aimed to present a positive view of Islam to the world. He ran into trouble after engaging with prostitutes in San Diego. When the FBI started tracking him, they found he visited prostitutes at least 7 times and paid up to $400 for sex each time. He preached in mosques in San Diego and Falls Church, Virginia. During investigations into the December 2001 Islamic attacks in the United States, the FBI discovered that 3 of the hijackers had attended his mosques. Awlaki left for Britain in September 2001, claiming he felt unsafe in America after the al-Qaeda attacks. He became radicalized and started preaching there. He moved to Yemen in 2004, but was imprisoned on charges of aiding terrorists. During his time in prison, he immersed himself in the writings of the Islamic Brotherhood and devoured the works of Sayyid Qutb, which intensified his fervor. After his release, he headed to Yemen's mountains, where he built his website and propaganda center. U.S. officials believe he shifted from simply inspiring to actively planning terrorism in the West. He definitely inspired Farouk Abdul-Muttalab, the underwear bomber who failed to detonate explosives on a Detroit-bound plane on Christmas Day 2009. The group also ramped up its online recruitment efforts, issuing an English-language magazine featuring articles such as "Make a Bomb in Your Mother's Kitchen." Inspire features articles about how to harm non-Muslims. One example is from an American, Samir Khan, titled, "I Am Proud to Be a Traitor to America." Khan grew up in North Carolina and New York City. Much of the propaganda was effective because its creators were Native Americans who understood social idioms and nuances of American society. Awlaki cited pop stars like Michael Jackson in his sermons. For other audiences, he quoted Dickens and upscale authors. His message resonated deeply, inspiring the Christmas Day airplane plot and the 2009 Fort Hood shooting by a U.S. Army psychiatrist. Unlike the reclusive and mild-mannered bin Laden, Awlaki was engaging and extroverted. He also had more credibility as a sheikh than bin Laden. He was involved in planning attacks in Britain, Australia, and the U.S. before he was killed. Security officials believe that al-Qaeda aimed to target London's transportation system, the Sydney Opera House, and New York's Grand Central Station. In November 2009, he inspired U.S. Army Major Nidal Hasan, a radicalized soldier, to attack fellow soldiers at Fort Hood, Texas. Their correspondence was uncovered by federal law enforcement before the attack, but no action was taken. Some of the September 11th hijackers were inspired by Awlaki. Khalid al-Midar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, who flew American Airlines Flight 77 into the Pentagon, attended a mosque where he preached. They include the July 7th bombers in London, who used to meet in a bookstore that sold lectures by Awlaki, and the Canadian terrorists known as the Toronto 18, who plotted to bomb the stock exchange. Court records from 2009 show that 3 of the 5 men convicted of plotting to attack soldiers at Fort Dix, New Jersey, 2 years earlier, had also been inspired by Awlaki's sermons. His contribution to terrorist strategy helped facilitate numerous, independent, lethal attacks. Death in Yemen. At age 40, Awlaki was killed by a Predator drone in Yemen in September 2011. Jonathan Evans, head of MI5, labeled him as the West's public enemy number 1, noting that Awlaki's involvement with al-Qaeda is of particular concern given his wide circle of followers in the West, including in the UK. Attorney General Eric Holder approved Awlaki's assassination. Other strikes also killed Awlaki's 16-year-old son, Abdul Rahman, who, like his father, was born in America. Jude Mohammed, from North Carolina, was killed in a drone attack in Pakistan. Congressman Dennis Kucinich said that the White House crossed a dangerous line and set a troubling precedent for how the U.S. handles terrorism cases. Mr. Awlaki's allegedly violent rejection of America was not acceptable in any way. Neither is it acceptable to bypass the Constitution through extrajudicial killings. Anwar al Awlaki was a persuasive and influential media figure for militant Islam. The impact of his efforts cannot be mistaken for that of the less convincing Adam Gadon. Awlaki set a deadly record by directing and inspiring attacks on Western targets. Though he is gone, his legacy persists through social media. His sermons still motivate Muslims willing to kill and sacrifice for their cause. Some continue to do so. Meet the Beatle, Jihadi John. This John of the Beatles had very little in common with John Lennon, who sang that the world should give peace a chance. No, this Beatle, whose real name was Mohammed Emwazi, shared only an everyday North English accent with this jihadist and not much else. So, who was Jihadi John? This John was Mohammed Emwazi, born in Kuwait in 1988, who moved with his family to Kensington, London, when he was 6. His father started a new life in London as a taxi driver. In Iraq, he belonged to an outcast tribe as a former Kuwaiti police officer. But he was clever and hard-working, and he became a successful taxi business owner. His son Mohammed was shy and studious. He was also athletic and dreamed of becoming a professional soccer player. In late adolescence, he turned to religion and enrolled at the University of Westminster, where he studied computer programming and graduated with high marks. At the same time, his intense Islamic radicalism began to develop. Westminster University was filled with radical Islam, and he was part of the London Boys, a network of British and East African Islamist extremists. His younger brother Omar was also an extremist and was linked to what was called the Muslim Mafia. Dead Man Walking. Emwazi's calm persona persisted into early adulthood. In 2009, he relocated to Kuwait and began working for an information technology company, where colleagues described him as conscientious and self-disciplined. However, he had a secret agenda, and MI5 was aware of him. They believe he and other London boys planned to travel to Somalia to join a terrorist group. British intelligence questioned him about his terrorist connections and plans. He told a reporter that he was afraid the British would try to kill him. In his words, "Sometimes I feel like a dead man walking." He couldn't go back to Kuwait, and he didn't want to live in Britain. So in 2013, he went to Syria. In his new home in Syria, he led the Islamic State in Iraq and the Sham, also known as ISIS. It was there that he earned the nickname Jihadi John, as one of 4 Britons with English accents. They were also called the ISIS Torture Squad, and for good reason. One captive describes his imprisonment. It was like being under the control of psychopaths and lunatics. The prison cells were cramped and cold, and prisoners were often shackled. The guards sometimes slept in an adjacent room, and the prisoners' screams could be heard from rooms away. To their amusement, the guards waterboarded and zapped captives with tasers. Guards enjoyed staging fights among the inmates. The losers were beaten. This was the Fight Club. Emwazi was known as a guard, torturer, and killer of Western hostages. He appeared in videos seeming to enjoy the terror and pain he caused his captives. Emwazi began his killing spree in August 2014 when he beheaded American photojournalist James Foley. He recorded this event along with other murders, including those of Stephen Sotloff, another American journalist, Peter Kassig, an aid worker, and British aid workers David Haynes and Alan Henning. He also killed others, mainly Syrian captives, and took pleasure in doing so. In his heavy London accent, he threatened President Obama with mass murder unless he stopped the airstrikes on ISIS targets. The president was not convinced, and he wanted him dead. Death came for the killer in November 2015. Emwazi had become careless in his murderous activities. Some of his routes were too predictable. His signature baseball cap gave him away and allowed British and American intelligence to track and kill him. A Predator missile ended his life. The other Beatles were tried in Western courts and received lengthy prison sentences. Thank you for listening to this episode of Jihad and the World. Our latest book, Cauldron of Terror, Hamas, Israel, and the World, will be available for purchase in July 2026. This podcast does not reflect the official position of the United States government. Until next time, goodbye from Kensington Security Consulting.